Etta sniffed. "You'd be surprised. There are children all over the place whose parents don't know how lucky they are." They went on talking for a long time, but no one could think of anything better than Etta's plan. Not if the position of the island was to be kept secret, and there was nothing more important than that. Coral and Etta weren't at all sure about Myrtle coming along, because she was not very good out in the world, and when she was away, she always pined for Herbert. "Are you sure you wouldn't rather stay behind?" said Coral now. But Myrtle had decided to be brave and said she thought that she should come along and do her bit. So they decided that the three of them would go on the mission. They still had to make sure that their cook, who was called Art, knew exactly what to do while they were away on their mission. Art was an escaped convict who'd been washed up in a rowing boat on their shore. He had killed a man when he was young, and now he wouldn't kill anything with arms or legs or eyes, not even a shrimp. But he made excellent porridge. Then they gathered together all the things they would need. Chloroform and sleeping powders, and anaesthetising darts, which they used for stunning animals that were injured so that they could set their limbs. All of them had things to carry the children away in. Aunt Etta had a canvas holdall, and Aunt Coral had a tin trunk with holes bored into it, and Aunt Myrtle had her cello case. As they waited for the wind to change so that they could sail the Peggotty to the next island and catch the steamer, they were terribly excited. It was a long and difficult journey. Many years ago, the army had tried to use their island for experiments in radio signals, and so as to keep its position secret, they had changed the maps and forbidden boats to come near it. In the end, they hadn't used it after all, but it was still a forgotten place, and the aunts meant to see that it stayed that way. "Of course, it won't be a real kidnap, because we shan't ask the parents for a ransom," said Etta. "It'll be more of a child snatch," Coral agreed. But whether it was a kidnap or a child snatch, it was still dangerous and wicked. And as they waved goodbye to the island, their hearts were beating very fast. By the time she was 10 years old, Minette had made the journey between London and Edinburgh 47 times. 47 station buffet sandwiches, 47 visits to the loo on the train, and 47 stomachaches, because changing families always churned up her insides. Minette's father lived in Edinburgh, in a tall grey house, and was a professor of grammar. Minette's mother lived in a flat in London and was an actress. At least, she would have been if anyone had given her any work. They had been separated since Minette was 3 years old, and they hated each other with a bitter and deadly hatred. On the journey, Minette would look out of the window, searching for houses where she and her mother and her father would live together one day like an ordinary family, with a cat and a canary and a dog. For it went on hurting her, hurting and hurting. Not that her parents were separated. Lots of children she knew had separated parents, but that they hated each other so much. On these journeys, Minette was usually put in the charge of an aunt. The aunt came from an office called Useful Aunts, and what she was like was important, because if she talked all the time or wanted to play silly games, Minette couldn't give her mind to finding houses for her parents to live in, or imagining beautiful scenes where she was run over and taken to hospital and her mother and father rushed to her bedside and looked at each other over their daughter's bleeding body and found that they loved each other after all. But as she got up to go on her 48th journey, Minette suddenly realised that it didn't matter what kind of aunt they sent to take her, because she'd given up hope. Her parents would always hate each other, and she would spend the rest of her life travelling from London to Edinburgh and back again, never quite knowing which was her home or where she properly belonged. And as though someone up there had heard her, they sent her that day a quite extraordinary aunt. She was so unlike the other aunts she had travelled with that both Minette and her mother stopped dead as they came up to where she waited, by the bookstall on Platform 1 of King's Cross Station.